live stream. It is aptly called Live with the Mexican. Sorry, I thought that was a good way of introducing it. How are you doing, Rafael?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. So just to make sure you know that it's not clickbait. You are Mexican, right?
Yes, I am.
I think some people can mistake you. Look slightly Central Asian, like someone from maybe Afghanistan, or you got that slight look. Do you get that sometimes?
Many times.
Probably at Hajj or Umrah. You recently, mashallah, did
Yeah,
Umrah, right?
yeah, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, good, good. So, Jazakallah khair for coming on live today. We're going to be speaking to you about the dawah in Mexico. Now, Mexico is a special place for Iera because we have a dawah center there, and you've been obviously involved in dawah for many, many years. So, firstly, let's just get into the thick of it. Why is it so important for us to give dawah in Latin America and in particular Mexico? Like if someone was to put that question to you and say, we can give dawah in all these different places, and you're like, no, 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 guys, we should be giving dawah in Mexico. We should be spreading the message of La ilaha illallah in Mexico. What would be the reasons you would give that we need to give the message of Islam there?
Well, I can mention a number of reasons, but think of this. Mexico is a country with a population of nearly 130 million people, and the Muslim population doesn't even reach 100,000.
That's right.
So if you think of if you think of the percentage, it's really really small. So we have this massive number of people who is non-Muslim who have never heard about Islam.
Yeah,
So it's a fertile land where we can spread the message of Islam and get a lot of ajr, inshallah, right? Like this is the first generation of Muslims. I'm telling you, this is the first generation of Muslims, and from this generation, inshallah, more Muslims will come. So this
inshallah.
is a great opportunity for us. Over 120, I think, in the last census we were 126 million of Mexicans only in Mexico. So, subhanallah, that's a big number, right? And
I mean,
another
there's a lot more Mexicans. It's just the ones in Mexico, there's 126 million.
Yeah, like I'm not talking about the Mexicans in the US or
Yeah,
somewhere else. Only
yeah.
in Mexico, it's over 126 million of
MashaAllah.
Mexicans.
That's
And
the place to give dawah. It's the place to give
of
dawah.
course,
Um, One thing that we've seen is that when you, Rafael, go to different parts of the world, you will see that the reception of Islam is varied. So some places people accept Islam quite easily. Some places people don't accept Islam. One thing that comes across from the data, one thing that comes across from people involved in dawah, is that people from Latin America and places like Mexico in particular are much more likely to accept Islam than other parts of the world. So, what would the reasons you would give as a revert yourself that you believe Mexicans are more likely to accept Islam than other people?
because they still have some fitra in themselves, right? We all have the fitra, right? But most of the Mexicans were raised in Christianity,
Yeah,
but they have conflicts with Christianity. So they do believe in God, but they actually are monotheistic, most of them.
yeah,
They don't believe in the Trinity, or they have issues with they believe in Jesus being God. So when you present Islam to them, they like it. It makes sense to them.
yeah.
So I think this is one of the reasons why they are likely to embrace Islam when they get to know about what Islam is, because sometimes they have misconceptions. It's not very common, but sometimes they have misconceptions. And when you clarify, you answer the questions, mashallah, it's very easy that they accept it. Then the difficult part comes, right? That they become steadfast, that they change their daily life. But accepting Islam, I think, is easy, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, I think you're definitely onto something. They are closer to the fitrah, and obviously people have certain traits, right? Nations have certain traits. People have certain traits. People have certain exposure. Mexicans, in many ways, are in the ideal location to receive Islam because they're so close to America, and there's a lot of Mexicans that go to America. They get influenced by the Muslim community there, and then they come back to Mexico, and you don't really have that type of interaction with the other Latin American states, right? The ones in south to Mexico. And the other thing which I think is quite important is that as a country, it is still quite religious. As a country, it's not like Argentina. It's not like France. Religion is taken quite seriously in Mexico, right? What would you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, religion is slowly getting lost in Mexico, but it's still you find churches everywhere. In every neighborhood, you find one or two churches everywhere in every city. So Mexico is still considered Catholic, a traditional country. So people do have a religion. If you ask them, if you stop by anybody on the street and you ask them, "Do you have any religion?" Like 90% will say, "Yeah, I'm a Catholic" or "I'm a Christian."
Mm,
So they do have a religion,
yeah,
but like I was saying, many times they have some inner conflicts, some ideas that don't make sense to them.
yeah,
So, mashallah, I think is very good opportunity for us as Muslims to give dawah to them because they do believe in God, but they don't believe in religions, in organized
yeah,
religions, right? So they are much closer to Islam than to any other religion, especially because of Tawheed, because of our
yeah,
belief.
yeah. I I think there's definitely a lot of truth in that. When we look at a society that generally has religion in its DNA, then it's more likely to accept Islam. It's already familiar with the story of Abraham and Moses and Jesus. There's already a lot of that background. And then when you add to it Islam, and then with Islam, actually, you said this earlier that there's a lot of baggage between Mexicans and Christianity because of the history and the way that it was brought about. And, if you look at Christopher Columbus and everything that happened at that time. So Islam doesn't have that baggage, right? Islam doesn't have those types of problems. And obviously the theology of Islam is a lot more simpler.
Yeah, definitely. A lot more simpler. It makes sense to them. It's very logical. And Mexicans like the fact that Islam is not in conflict with science, for example,
Mm,
because people is getting education in Mexico, and usually when they're getting education, sometimes they get influenced towards atheism, right? Because there is a conflict many times, in many cases, there's a conflict between the church and science.
yeah.
But in Islam, that's not the case.
Mm,
We don't have a conflict with science. Actually, we encourage people to get in deeper into science because that's going to give you a better understanding of the creation and of course of the creator as well, and people like that. It makes
yeah.
sense to them, and in Mexico it's very common to find. I mean, I can talk about my experience when I do dawah.
Yeah.
Many people like this, that
Yeah.
we don't have this conflict with science, that we don't have this conflict with other religions, that we can, be respectful,
Yeah.
but at the same time, learn about our theology and
Mm,
understand God and get closer to them. It really makes sense to them, alhamdulillah. So I think it's
yeah.
easy to do that in Mexico. And, going back to the question that you asked earlier, I think this is one of the reasons why we should do dawah in Mexico because
Mm,
it's actually easy. People is very receptive. People is
yeah.
very open, and mashallah, I think we have some good results.
Yeah. And it's linked back to something you said earlier, Rafael, that this is the first generation, right, of Muslims in Mexico. You said something like 100,000, did you say they are in Mexico?
We are not even that. I mean, officially, by the official numbers of the government, the last census was in 2020, right? And officially, all over Mexico, we are over 8,000 Muslims. Only 8,000 Muslims.
8,000 Muslims.
8,000 Muslim in a population of 126 million.
Allahu Akbar. That's a
So
drop.
imagine,
That's a drop in the ocean. And this is a place where people are ready to accept Islam. This is a place where people, they want to believe in something other than what they've been taught. People aren't turning towards atheism, right? People are looking for answers. And what they generally do. Correct me if I'm wrong. From my understanding, what people do in those situations is they jump from one Christian sect to another, as opposed to look at another religion, because the only religions available are different varieties of Christianity, right?
Yeah. Yeah, in many cases they jump from one branch of Christianity to another branch, or they go to the extreme.
Mm,
Like they have issues with the church or with the belief, and they think that they're atheists, but they are not.
yeah,
They just have a wrong understanding of who God is,
yeah,
right? But since they don't accept the concept that they are taught since childhood, the Trinity and that Jesus is God and the Son is the Father and so on.
yeah.
Since they don't accept that, they think that they're atheist. So they jump from one extreme to the other. And
Mm,
what I have heard from many people, when you present to them Islam, when you introduce them to Islam,
mm-hmm.
I get one question which is very strong. They ask you like, where were you when I was looking for these things? Like, what is the people like you? What are the Muslims? So that we can learn about this because we need it.
Yeah,
I can talk. I mean, I can talk in about many situations where I have spoken to, especially older people,
mm-hmm.
because as you get mature and your ideas are, different than when you're young,
Yeah,
they are looking for a spirituality and they are thinking about the hereafter, and they just don't have all the answers that they are looking for.
yeah,
And when they get to know about Islam, they're like, where were you when I was looking for these answers? I've been looking for these answers for many years or for decades, and nobody could answer these questions that I had. And you, in 5 minutes, you gave me the answer, like very simple and very easy to understand. For example, recently we had new Muslim retreats here in the Dawah Center where I am right
yeah.
now, and we invited people who are the only Muslims in town. There is no Muslim, there is no mosque, there is nothing in their city. They are the only Muslims, or they are even interested about Islam.
Yeah.
So we invite them, right? And I remember the case of one brother. He's from an ethnic group. It's called Zapoteca, right, in the south of Mexico, and he's the only Muslim in at least 300 kilometers around where he lives.
That's amazing.
And and he was really really impressed. He was so happy about the retreat, and he was so motivated that he's already doing dawah to his people. I mean, to his
Inshallah.
neighbors, to his family. Everything that he learned, he took all the information and he's already doing dawah. So
Inshallah.
you can tell how much they need it.
And they're giving dawah with the very little knowledge they have, but they have a lot of passion. They have a lot of
Yeah,
energy. They have a lot of drive. And it's history in the making. I don't think this is an understatement. It is literally history in the making. Historians, 200-300 years down the road, they may be looking at this and saying, well, why did Islam spread in these areas in Mexico? Well, there were these activities, there were these people, there were this effort that was actually going on. And everything starts small. The Prophet ﷺ, when he was there and, he went to Taif and nobody's, reciprocating to his message. And then he goes from one place to another. And then he gets, 70 odd people accepting Islam. And before you know it, then a city, then it expands. You never know. Same thing. Here in London, 100 years ago, there was no mosque, right? Today, I think, maybe Saki can help me out with this. The latest census was like 15% of London's Muslim. Something like this, right? And there's a mosque under every rock. there's a, honestly, like where I was living previously, I remember I could walk to two mosques for like literally from the time that, walking from my house to the actual mosque was just a couple of minutes. So, 100 years ago, it was unthinkable. Likewise, 100 years is, for us, we think of 100 years, we think that's such a vast era of time. And, no, but if you really look at it in the history of life on earth, it's nothing. The history of life, I was trying to give a serious message and I just saw the words big taco just appear on the message that just completely took me what I was talking about. What's the last thing I said, Rafael, before the big taco turned up?
you were talking that there is a mosque under every rock in London.
Musa did that on purpose, sorry. I think he did that just to put me off. What was I saying? I was saying something important.
you were saying about the comparison between 100 years
I think you need to
ago and
carry on. Sorry, I've still got a bit of big taco jokes in me, so I need to. I think you carry on, and I'll join you again.
yeah, I got distracted too, mashallah. But yeah, like you were
Sorry. Why would you
like you
do
were
that?
saying.
Why would you put that on the screen? Okay. So anyway, we know in 100 years' time, inshallah, there's going to be many people in Mexico accepting Islam. They're going to be saying La ilaha illallah, and people are going to think, okay, so why did these people accept Islam? Where did they come from? How did Islam spread? Well, there was this Dawah center, and people were there. They were learning Islam. Sometimes when we look at the new Muslims, there's only a few of them, right? There's only a few of them, but wallahi, they're mountains. They're mountains. They're so passionate. You could take the passion of one city, in the Muslim world, right? Just any small city, and you could take the passion of dawah in that city, the passion of all the people in that city to give dawah, and you put it in some sort of test tube, and you take the passion of one of these new Muslims in Mexico and you put it in another, it might be greater. Because these people, sometimes, Allahu Akbar, they put themselves at risk, at financial deficit, just to spread the message of Islam. And they can't stop. There's amazing stories of new Muslims going around, spreading Islam, teaching Islam, doing these types of things. And the zealousness of these new Muslims, it's something which is contagious. This is what I feel. When I meet new Muslims and they're passionate, it's faster than Corona, right? And there's no vaccination against it. You can actually feel their passion. You can feel their energy. You can feel their drive. And that's what we want. We want this ummah to wake up. We want this ummah to understand that the message of Islam is not supposed to be just for those parts of the world where it is currently. The message of Islam is for every single country on earth, every single city on earth, every single town on earth, every single house. There will be a Muslim in that house. Why? Because we know this from a narration of the Prophet ﷺ. So it will happen in Mexico. It'll happen in the UK. It'll happen in every place on earth. The only question is, are we playing a role towards that happening? So tell us, Rafael, what has Iera been up to in the last couple of years in Mexico?
A lot of things, bro. Mashallah. I mean, at this stage, I think we have at least one team of volunteers in every state of the country, which is
MashaAllah.
something that we have been working for a few years already. But mashallah, the last event that we had, the World Dawah Day that was done in December the 3rd, that time we realized how many people are willing to do dawah, because we got requests from every state, in some cities, one, two, or three teams sometimes, to get materials to do dawah because they wanted to be part of this World Dawah Day. And we got, I think, around, at the beginning, it was around 200 volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
And on the day of the activity, it was over 100, but that's still a really good number.
Allahu Akbar.
I mean, I can tell you, when I converted to Islam, I used to pray Jummah, and that was the only activity that was related to Islam. 1 hour a week related to Islam. That was the only activity. And sometimes we used to pray. I remember sometimes we used to pray three people only: the
Allahu
imam,
Akbar.
myself, and another brother, and that's it. And that was the only Islamic activity that I had. And seeing now, over 10 years later, that not only we have Muslims praying every day, but we have volunteers who are willing to sacrifice their time, their money to do
Yeah.
dawah. Subhanallah, that's
Allahu
incredible. So
Akbar.
the growth that we see is amazing, and I really want to emphasize the fact that this is the first generation because, I mean, so that we can relate it. For example, in your case, brother Subur, like how many generations has your family lived in the UK? How many generations would you say?
2, I think.
2 generations.
I think
Okay,
2.
but so your father or your grandfather lived or moved to the
Yeah,
UK, right?
grandfather, yeah.
Your grandfather, and like what was the situation of the Muslim community back then?
Nothing. Literally, like, you couldn't get any halal meat. There was hardly any mosques, hardly any Islamic identity. There was even Muslim communities were very dispersed. It was almost like, like this brother that you described, that's from that indigenous region where, he's the only Muslim in that area, and there's just, hardly anybody. Like in the beginning days, it was tough, and now,
Yeah.
it's we have places like
And look,
Luton, and
mashallah, you have places where you see Muslims everywhere. You have a lot of masajid.
yeah,
You have halal places. You have a lot of places where Muslims can go and learn.
yeah,
And mashallah, I mean, right now we have one place where we can come and learn because the last retreat. I will not go too far, but for example, I will tell you about the last retreat that we did last month.
yeah.
The brother that I was telling you about, the Zapoteca, he traveled by bus like 36 hours, something like that, by bus, just to
Allahu
come to the
Akbar,
retreat.
Allahu Akbar.
Just to come to the retreat. And when he was going back, the roads were closed. So he had to take many different routes in the middle of the, I don't know, it's not jungle, but like rainforest. He had to take different transportations because sometimes the road was blocked. So he had to get off the bus and then take another transportation, and he did that like 3 or 4 times. So you can see the
Allahu
effort.
Akbar.
And then there's a sister who came from a city called Merida, which is in Yucatan. Is in the southeast corner of Mexico. And then another brother come from Mexicali. He's from the completely different opposite direction. Like one came from the south, from you can say it's like the border in the south, and the brother from the northern border. So from both extremes, and then from Oaxaca, traveling 36 hours by bus, and you can see the effort that they're doing because they really want to learn their religion. The brother from Mexicali, he
Wow.
was saying that he was saying that. He told us that there was an Islamic center in his city, but it was born in 2009, and since then there was nothing, no Muslim community, nothing in his city. So when he converted to Islam like 2 years ago, he took shahada over a video call with me,
Wow.
and he said, I'm ashamed because I feel like I don't have much knowledge. People ask me about my religion, and I don't have much knowledge.
Mm.
Then he came to a retreat and he was so active. Like in the retreat, you study 24 hours. It's very, very intensive. And he was really, really happy, alhamdulillah. And I mean, this, you may not see the results, although we can see the results immediately because we see the growth. But imagine these people in 5 years, 10 years,
Mm.
20 years, and then their children. Maybe generations after it is gonna be like you are the grandson of the person who went to the UK first when there was no Muslim identity, there was no Islamic community, and now the thing has changed a lot. And maybe that's gonna be the case in 30, 40 years, 50 years.
Allahu
We don't
Akbar.
know. It only
Allahu.
started in this point, right?
That's an amazing point, and it really puts things into perspective because we know for certain that Islam will enter every house. We know that, and that's not something we're unsure about. We think is probabilistic. We know that with absolute certainty, and that means every single house in southern Mexico, northern Mexico, eastern Mexico, western Mexico, central Mexico, Islam will enter every single house, no matter how rare it may be right now, no matter how distant the Muslims may be from each other. Hearing the story of this brother, what was his name, the one who caught the buses and
Gubija,
Gu
Gubija.
Gubija.
Yeah.
This brother, may Allah reward him, he did something the vast majority of Muslims would not do for the sake of knowledge. And he didn't just do it once, multiple times, traveling an initial thing, 36 hours. On the way back, the road is closed, and going through all these difficulties for what? For the sake of Islam, for the sake of Allah, for the sake of the Prophet ﷺ, to spread the message of the Prophet. For the sake of Allah, he's doing these things. The love of Allah and his messenger is driving him.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? Like, he wants to spread Islam. He wants to remain upon Islam. And how easy is Islam for us compared to these people? Like, honestly, it's like their situation's difficult. Their situation's tough. Their situation requires them to be tenacious. And then Allah puts in a strong dose of Iman, Iman that we don't have. And that Iman is what drives them. It's like, okay, we need to go pray, Isha at the mosque. And it's like, oh, it's raining. Okay, I think I'll pray at home. Like we're so easily resistant. We're so easily resistant, and that's for something which is within our grasp, right? Like, okay, you just go like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour, whatever. Here we're talking about somebody leaving their family, leaving their business, leaving everybody, going, and traveling is not safe in Mexico. Like you're traveling these long distances. And we're not talking about, gangs or even natural disasters, just buses going off track and drivers falling asleep. Could be anything. I mean, look, at the end of the day, the longer you're on the road, the longer, you're putting yourself at risk. All of this for what? All of this so that he can come and attend a new Muslim workshop, so he can learn his Islam, so he can actually go out and teach other people. Now, his passion, the passion of this man, the sacrifices of this man, the difficulty that he's going through is something which will be appreciated by Allah. It's not possible. It's not possible. Someone is going through pain and suffering except that Allah is going to appreciate that. And that appreciation is what? That appreciation is that in this dunya he will be rewarded, in the hereafter inshallah he'll be rewarded, and the reward will be in the form of new Muslims inshallah decades from now. Decades from now. It's what? 20, 23, 21, 23, 100 years from now. His area, that may be 15% Muslim, maybe 100% Muslim. We don't know. What we do know is that the effort and the passion and the drive and the desire of these new Muslims is phenomenal. It's actually phenomenal. Yeah. I'm getting excited just hearing these stories, because these people are special. They want to spread Islam. And if you're watching this live stream, the question that you need to ask yourself is, the message of Islam is going to enter every house. We know the message of La ilaha illallah is going to prevail. We know that Islam is true. So what are you waiting for? Why don't you submit your papers to join the dawah? And what is submitting your papers? Just make dua. Ask Allah to use you for His deen. I remember many years ago, I was with a student of knowledge, and he gave me a piece of advice that he learnt from one of the scholars, and he just made a very simple point. He said, wake up in the middle of the night, make dua and submit your papers to Allah, and simply ask Allah, oh Allah, use me for your deen. Very simple piece of advice. And I thought about this because the fact is, anybody, wherever you are right now, we are living in a golden time that is unprecedented. The dawah that we can do in Mexico today is not the dawah that we could have done 100 years ago. 100 years ago, this was not possible. Rafael, 100 years ago, could you go and give dawah the way that you are right now in Mexico?
You would get killed. Basically.
You'd get killed. You'd get killed. There would be no passing of the risk assessment. Yeah, you would. It was impossible. It was impossible. And now today, what's happening? Not only are you giving dawah, you're here on this live stream, you're here talking to the people who are listening right now, and you're telling them about what's going on in Mexico. Even 100 years ago, if you were involved in dawah and dawah was successful, I wouldn't know about it, no one else would know about it, but the world knows about it now. And the Muslims should support this effort. The Muslims should get involved in this effort. This is historical work. This is the legacy of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ is not going to come to Mexico, and he's not going to give dawah there. The Sahaba are not going to come and give dawah there. It is our duty. He passed away. He is somebody that left us with a legacy. He left us with a mission, and Prophet ﷺ left us with a very core message, and that is the message of La ilaha illallah, the message of liberation, the message of staying away from everything that takes you away from Allah and to focus on Allah alone. And that's what humanity needs. That's what the Mexicans need. That's what the Londoners need. That's what everyone needs. And that is the mission that we want to join. And Rafael, you yourself, you're a convert. How difficult was it for you to accept Islam? When was it? Like 5, 7, 8 years ago, whatever it was. Did you just go to the local Islamic center and they gave you books and they taught you to pray? And how did that happen?
Oh, that's very strange, because I converted to Islam, I think it was 2008 when I converted to Islam, alhamdulillah. But I didn't know any Muslims in my city for like a year, nearly 1 year, maybe between 6 months and 1 year, I didn't get to know any Muslims.
That's amazing.
I thought I was the only crazy guy in my city who was trying to be a Muslim. but it was so difficult. It was so difficult to get
So,
information,
so sorry,
to learn
sorry,
anything. Yeah.
sorry, Rafael. Sorry to cut you off. You're going into your new Muslim story, which I definitely want to hear, and the viewers want to hear, which is going to be fantastic, inshallah. But the question I should have asked you before I asked you about the new Muslim side is, how on earth did you accept Islam when you're sitting in Mexico and there's nobody giving dawah and there's nothing going on? I'm sure the viewers want to hear that first.
Well, because I got to know about Islam over the internet. I used to play games on the internet. There was a website where I used to go to play chess. So I got to play against brothers and sisters from Muslim countries. And then I saw the flag. What attracted my attention was the flag, the crescent moon and the star. That was the main
Yep.
thing that attracted me because I didn't know the meaning. So I was like, what is this country from? And then I started asking questions, and they told me that they were Muslims, and that is what triggered my curiosity.
Mm.
Then I got the Quran, a translation that was in Arabic and Spanish. I read it very quickly because it was so nice to read. And at the end of the read, I was just asking myself if I should practice that. I recognized that it was the truth. So I
Mm.
was just asking myself whether if I wanted to follow the truth or if I just wanted to be a hypocrite and just ignore the truth. So I said, okay, I have to follow it. I cannot just ignore it and leave it. And you have a lot of fears when you are getting to know about Islam. You have many fears, to be honest. You fear the reaction of your family, the society, the change in life. There's a lot of doubts and things in your head, and shaitan is playing tricks on you, of course. So you have many things, but at the end of the day, I just decided, you know what? I'm gonna try it. I'm just gonna give it a try and see how it goes. And if it goes well, I'll keep going. If
Yeah.
I discover there's something wrong or if that Islam is false, I'll just leave it. Nobody's gonna, tie me to be a Muslim, right? So if I find something bad, false, I'm gonna leave it.
Mm.
And I said, okay, khalas, I'll do it. And I started trying to be a Muslim, but it was so difficult to find information. Like I was saying, I didn't find any Muslim in town. So what I could learn was on the internet only, and you need someone that actually can answer your question. You
Yeah.
need someone who has to explain to you, one to one, and you don't have that.
Mm.
But Alhamdulillah. I think Allah saved me from many dangers that you face in Mexico, especially when you're a youngster. Allah kept me away from many things, from many bad things.
Yeah.
And I kept going. I kept going. After every doubt that I had, I used to balance, the Islamic version and the atheist version or the Catholic version and ponder about it and see what was the truth. And every time I was thinking about it, I discovered that Islam was right. It
Yeah.
made more sense. It was more logical. So every time I kept going, I kept going. And then Ramadan came. Mashallah, it's long story also, and here I am. After I don't know 14, 15 years,
Allahu Akbar.
still trying to be a Muslim, right?
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. And the powerful thing about your story is all it really took is inquiring about a flag on a video game, and then somebody said, okay, we're Muslims, and you got a Spanish Quran, you read it. And imagine if at that time you had the ability to visit a dawah center, like we have a dawah center in Guadalajara at the moment. It would have been
Subhanallah.
so much easier, because human beings, we're social creatures, right? If you're going to be on your own, you're going to think, like, forget this, I'm struggling on my own. A year, 6 months, you'd not met another person that you could say assalamu alaikum to. You didn't have another human being that you could literally touch and say, you're a Muslim, I'm a Muslim. Like, there's nothing. It would mess with your head. Like, you have
Yeah.
nobody. There's nobody like you. You're the only person saying La ilaha illallah. That is rare. And that's not what we want for the new Muslims. That's not what we want for the Mexicans who are interested in Islam. There are millions of Mexicans who are interested. There are millions of Mexicans which are sincere people just looking for the truth. And all they have at the moment is bias, that news that they get from the media or negative things that they hear in society. But when people, and Rafael, this is the feedback I got. Saqib Ali's here in the office, and he gave me this feedback. I think it was Salahuddin, a few others of the guys that went to Mexico for the first time in 2018. The feedback that they got is that when we did our exhibition and we did it like on the second floor or whatever, people were accepting Islam left, right, and center. And if not accepting Islam, they were interested in Islam. And these guys came back buzzing because they'd never seen anything like this, right? Because they're used to London, and people don't show that much interest. So it shows that, look, it's true. We have evidence to show this. And now we have this Dawah Center, right? And this Dawah Center is going to be on the historical record. This is going to be a footnote in history on the minimum. If not, it's going to be a chapter in the history of Islam in Mexico. It's going to be significant. And this is something we want to keep running. And we want to make sure that these new Muslims are supported and people learn about the message of Islam. Tell us about this Dawah Center and what its function is.
Well, like you were saying, I wish I had something like this when I just converted to Islam over 10 years ago, because I see the activities that we have, and I just think if I had this when I was a new Muslim, subhanAllah, things would have been so much easier.
Yeah.
But it makes you value things, right? It makes you value the blessings of Allah, but also it makes you understand why you face so many difficulties, because then you have consciousness of what it takes to do things, right? And for example, right now we have the Jesus exhibition every day. We have the Dawah Center open every day,
MashaAllah.
7 days a week. We have OSs available every day, alhamdulillah. We have different types of classes. Like any Muslim can literally cross the door, and if they have any questions, we have someone who can help them, whatever they need. If they need help with the wudu, if they need help with the salah, if they want to learn how to read the Quran, they have someone who can support them, a brother or a sister, whoever needs that. And we have classes about the belief. We have classes about the Quran. We have classes to learn Arabic, and I mean different types. And they are open to Muslims and to non-Muslims also, because this is not exclusive for Muslims. We want this to be for everyone, right? And something really interesting. I have to tell you one story, short story. My memory is very short, right? But for example, let me tell you about what happened last Friday, last Jummah. So we prayed Jummah here in the Dawah Center. That's another activity that we have. We have the 5 prayers, and we have the Jummah prayer also. And there's a brother who couldn't make it on time for the Jummah, but he came. He got to know about the activities and about the place on the internet, on Facebook. So he said, okay, I'll go and speak to them to see what Islam is about. He just wanted to get some information, right? And he ended up having a conversation with a brother whose name is Jesus. He had a conversation with him, and then I had a conversation with him also. I don't know, maybe 2-3 hours talking to him.
Right.
He had many questions. He had many things to say. Family issues that he wanted to get advice.
Yeah.
And at the end, he ended up taking the Shahada.
MashaAllah.
He learned how to make wudu, and he already knows, I think, 3 or 4 verses of Surah Al-Fatiha. And this brother, he said, before leaving on last Friday, he said, I'm really surprised. I really feel good, but I'm so surprised because I just came to ask for something to read. Maybe I wanted a leaflet, and I left the place being a Muslim.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
And this story is very interesting because I asked him, okay, so what triggered your curiosity about Islam? You know what he said? He said, some years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I started getting interest in MMA, the mixed martial arts, right? He gets some interest in that. And he saw our brother Habib.
Okay.
Right? He saw our brother, and he was shocked at the way he has a good relationship, or he had a good relationship with his father, right? I think his father passed away, rahimahullah.
Yeah,
I'm not sure,
rahimahullah.
but right. But he was really impressed by the way he had this good relationship with his father. And this brother later on, he told me that he had some issues with his father, so we had a discussion about it. And he said, you know, I really wish I had a relationship like Habib with his father. I really wanted
MashaAllah.
something like this with my father. So that touched his heart, you know, that touched his heart.
Mm.
And he got to know that that is because of his religion, because after every fight he used to say Allahu Akbar, you know, all the credit goes to Allah. I didn't do anything, it's all
Yeah,
from Allah. And he
MashaAllah.
started getting more curiosity, so he had interest in Islam after that.
Mm.
And he got more information about Islam later on, like 2 years later.
That's amazing.
He found some of the activities that we do. He found them on the internet, because some
Mm.
some of them, especially the retreats and some activities that we did in rehab centers where drug and alcohol addicts are. He saw some of those activities, and he said, "Oh, so there are actually Muslims in Guadalajara. There are Muslims in Mazam." So he thought, "Okay, I'll go and get a leaflet, and then I'll read it to see what it is." And he ended up being a Muslim. Subhanallah.
MashaAllah. You know, these stories are absolutely phenomenal. These these are the things which are going to make a difference when we tell this to the world, when we show Muslims, average Muslims, these are your brothers and sisters in Islam. These are the
Yeah.
people who need to be supported. These are the people who we need to reach out to. They are as much part of the Ummah as the people who've been generationally Muslim in Syria for hundreds of years, or Pakistan, or Indonesia, or Nigeria, whatever it is. This is part of the Ummah. You know, when we think of the Ummah, we think of, you know, just that green belt across the Middle East, going to North Africa and then all the way to Malaysia. And we think, no, the Ummah is every single Muslim, including these Muslims in Mexico. So, you know, Alhamdulillah, today on this live stream, you know, we've covered a little bit of your story, but we need to do that again. What we do in Mexico in terms of the Dawah Center, and generally why Dawah is so important. So, is there any last message you want to give to the viewers? Maybe linked to the fact that Ramadan's coming up, and you know, in Ramadan is a time for something special as well, in terms of charity. So, any last message you want to give?
Yeah, I really want to encourage people who wants to be part of the deen. I mean, I keep inviting people to come to Mexico and do dawah, but I know that for some people that is not possible. Uh, Either they are afraid, they fear the cartels, or whatever. For any reason, they are not able to come to Mexico. If they can, that would be phenomenal. But
Mm,
if they cannot, the way that they can support the Dawah, and the way they can support the new Muslims is donating, right? Is donating for the sake of Allah, and trying to help our activities. Because I was doing a reflection, and let's say the brother Gubija who came to the retreat, we had seen him the I think 1 year ago, over a year ago, that the brothers from the UK came. We found it on Facebook, and we didn't plan it at first, but then we got a different direction just to meet him and deliver a Quran to him, because he didn't have any Quran.
mm.
So we went, see him, and give the Quran to him. And then he came to this retreat. He took Shahada in the retreat. I have, mashallah, the video is amazing, because you can see the emotion in his eyes. He was crying,
Allahu
like
Akbar.
really, really much. And and now he's doing dawah. He took Qurans, uh, and he's already delivering the Qurans and sharing the information that he learned. And I don't know, I was doing the calculation, the math on the things that had to be covered to him so that he can come, right?
Yeah,
He comes from a very remote area, and I don't know, maybe 200 pounds to allow him to come.
yeah,
Imagine the person that sponsored those 200 pounds.
yeah,
Imagine the reward that he's getting, because he's the first Muslim in town,
yeah,
and he's already doing dawah to other people there. I think now there is another Muslim. I think there's another Muslim now there.
yeah,
And his son, who is, I think, 5 years old,
yeah.
5 or 6 year old, he's already learning how to recite Al Fatihah,
Allahu
he's
Akbar.
already learning how
Allahu
to
Akbar.
pray. So imagine the person who did that donation, can you imagine how fortunate that person is? Maybe
Mm.
he doesn't know the reward that he's getting,
Yeah.
but in the day of judgment, of course, he will know. Maybe in Jannah, Allah will make them get together into Jannah, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't even know each other.
Yeah.
So my message is to support, if they cannot come, support the dawah, not only in Mexico, but in different countries. I think in
Yeah.
general, in Latin America, the situation is very similar. I think this is the first generation all over Latin America. So I think this is something that we have to do for our own cause. I
Yeah.
mean, it's for the sake of Allah, but it's for our own benefit. I mean, if we do something, we're going to see that in front of Allah in the day of judgment, which surely is going to come, right? So if we are conscious about it, I think we should be involved some way. We need to
Inshallah.
we need to find one way to be involved, by little or by something big, whichever is our capacity. But Allah is going to reward, inshallah.
Absolutely. Jazakallah khair for your time. Please do join us next time. Again, we will be live with another da'i from a different part of the world. We are going to be bringing back Rafael, of course, for Ramadan, so he can speak about the fantastic work that we're doing in Ramadan. So until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.